Hello, welcome to the session on Microsoft Graph Connectors. I am Raju, Program Manager for the Graph Connectors platform, and I'm joined here today by my colleague Nicholas Moreau.
Hi, I am Nicolas Moreau. I'm a program manager on the Microsoft Search team, working primarily on the API exposed to query data in the Microsoft Graph.
We are passionate about improving workplace productivity, and today we will show you a cool new way to streamline the discoverability of your enterprise content. Let's begin with a day in life of Megan, who recently joined Contoso as a marketing intern. Her entire team is heads down working on the launch of their next gen laser printer. Lucky for her, Contoso rolled out Microsoft 365, and now there's a prominent search bar available on the top of every single Microsoft product. Whether it be Office or SharePoint, no matter where she searches from, she is able to find key information from all over the Microsoft cloud. This search bar is part of Microsoft Search, which is the enterprise search hub for all Microsoft 365 customers. Next, when she opens up a new tab in her Edge Chromium browser, she has an informational view. It is a feed with personalized content recommendations based on activity around her. And finally, she notices key topics highlighted in her Outlook emails, Teams messages, and even SharePoint pages. The topics, as well as topic cards, were completely machine curated by Project Cortex. In addition to offering a definition for these topics, Project Cortex also offers a view of people who are experts in the topic and resources related to the topic. All of this was possible because of Microsoft Graph. You could think of Graph as the data fabric that holds all the information in the Microsoft Cloud, whether it be your emails, Teams conversations, calendar items, or even SharePoint OneDrive files. We offer search, discovery, and insights as services over this content. Everything is rosy for Megan until she realizes that Contoso just recently moved to Microsoft 365, and not all of Contoso's content is in the Microsoft Cloud. For instance, Contoso has a humongous file share, a handful of wikis, and a few non-Microsoft SaaS services that they use. As a result, Megan is missing out on a ton of content, ranging from training materials locked in an on-premise LMS to the onboarding pages in the company intranet. None of this content is discoverable from a single place. They're more like islands of information, and Megan has to hop from one island to another to be able to effectively deliver at work. Wouldn't it be great if Megan was able to search and discover content across all these enterprise repositories from a single place? Well, with Graph connectors, she can. Microsoft Graph offers a simple and intuitive way to push content from any external data source, whether it's an on-premise LOB system or a third-party SaaS service. Once your data has been added to Graph, you can benefit from all the search and discovery experiences just like any other content natively present in the Microsoft Cloud. To get started, you could choose from an ecosystem of over 100 connectors or build your own connector to add content to Graph. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to build a connector. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to use a SQLite DB that has my course catalog. I'm going to add these courses onto Microsoft Graph and make them discoverable through Microsoft Search. In order to build a connector, we need to register an AAD application. And to do that, let's head over to the Azure portal. For the purpose of this demo, I've already registered an AAD app. Make sure to add and grant admin consent to the permission external item.readwrite.all. This is the permission that you would require to add items onto the graph. You would also notice another permission external item.read.all. This is the permission that you'd use to build custom experiences out of the data that you added on graph. Once your app has been registered, we can get started with building the connector. Building a connector is extremely easy. It just takes 3 simple steps. First, let's begin with creating a connection. To add your data on Microsoft Graph, you need to create a connection. A connection is a container for your external data. It serves as a logical representation of your data source in the Microsoft Cloud. The connection is also the primary unit of administration in the Graph Connectors platform. While there are several ways to model a connection, in this case, I am going to create a single connection to add all my courses into. I have created a simple console application using the Graph SDKs to illustrate how to build a connector. And here I can go ahead and create my connection. When I do that, I prompt for an input. I prompt for the connection ID as the input. Connection ID is a unique identifier for your connection. And I can provide a friendly name for this connection, which will show up in the Modern Admin Center. And once I have provided the ID, name, and description, I make a create connection call onto Graph to create my connection. You notice that my connection has been created and the current connection has been set to the course catalog connection that I just created. Let's see what's happening under the hood. When I make a create connection call, what happens is a HTTP post to /external/connections on Microsoft Graph. Once I do that, my connection gets created. The next key step is to register the connection schema. Connection schema is nothing but a collection of properties and their attributes. The course DB has a whole range of properties. I pick and choose the properties that are relevant to be consumed within various graph experiences and add them onto the connection schema. In this case, I have chosen course ID, title, link, description, and a few other properties. First, I go about marking title and description as searchable. When you do that, I get search hits when the query term is present in the title or description. Next, I go about marking a whole range of properties as queryable. By adding properties as queryable, I am able to use them in keyword query language and in scoped queries, such as provider:skillsoft, which will further refine my search results to courses where the provider is Skillsoft. The next key thing that I need to do is identify the properties that I would like to retrieve and add in my display templates. In this case, I have properties like icon, title, link, thumbnail, and a few other properties that I would love to add on my display templates. Now, I go into my schema and mark all these properties retrievable. You must be extremely judicious when marking a property as retrievable. Never mark a large property as retrievable as it might adversely affect query latency. Finally, when I mark a property as refinable, I can add it as a custom filter in my search page. In this case, I've added provider and course type as custom filters on my search page. Another key aspect of schema design is adding labels. Labels are well-known tags that help Microsoft 365 understand the semantics of your data. No matter what your properties are called in the schema, as long as you are able to add the right set of labels against it, you will be able to enjoy a whole range of benefits ranging from default display templates to a significantly improved search relevance. Now that we learnt about schema, let's go ahead and register the schema for our connection. In this case, I have listed down all the key properties that I have in my course DB that would be useful for us in the Microsoft experiences. You would also notice that I have added the data type as well as the search attributes against each property that I have added. Registering schema is as simple as doing a HTTP post on /external/connections/connection ID/schema. This is an async operation. In the response header, I find the location for this operation. I can use this location to get the operation status. Once the schema is registered, the next key step is to sync your content. Items that are added to a connection need to conform to the structure of Microsoft Graph external item, which means each item in the connection needs to have a unique item ID. You'd use this ID to create, update, or delete the item in Graph. So in my case, I'll use the primary key in my dataset, the course ID, as the item ID. The item itself has three key sections: ACL, Properties, and Content. The access control list, or ACL in short, has information that is used to determine whether a particular user or group has access to view an item in any Microsoft experience. Access control list is an array of access control entries. Currently, we support allowing or denying access to specific AD users or groups in our ACEs. There is also a special ACE called Everyone, which denotes every single user in the tenant. The next key section is Properties. And here you might notice I'm adding all the key properties from a course database. Content is the most important part of the item. This is where bulk of the item goes. In case of the courses I'm indexing, I'm going to add the complete transcript of the course in the content. Choosing the right content property has significant impact on relevance as well as graph experiences. As of now, we support ingesting content of type text or HTML, which means that if you have a binary file, you are expected to parse it down to text before ingesting. If you are ingesting an image or video, extract metadata using techniques such as OCR or transcription. Anything added into content is full text indexed by default. While content cannot be directly added into your search results, we allow you to add auto-generated snippets of relevant sections in your content to your search results. Once the schema has been registered, I can start a full crawl of all the content in my course DB. I'm using the course ID as the item ID and granting access to everyone in the tenant. Instead of doing a full crawl of all the items in the course DB, I could also do an incremental crawl of items that changed based on a last modified timestamp. Behind the scenes, when each course is added to graph, we are making an absurd call to slash connections, connection ID, slash items with the item ID. You might notice that I've used the course ID as the item ID here, and I've defined the ACL to determine the permissions on who has access to an item and who doesn't. Most external data sources would have a notion of external group or group-like constructs. If you have external groups in your data source that are not AAD groups, we allow you to sync your external groups along with membership and use the external groups in the ACL of your items. For instance, here I used the Graph Connectors Group Sync APIs to create an external group to represent the Contoso marketing group in my LMS system. And I can add AD users as members, AD groups as members, or even other external groups as a member to this group. And then I can use this external group to set permissions on my item. However, if you have non-AD users in your data source, you need to make sure to translate them to the appropriate AAD users before ingesting your items. Once your item has been added to the graph, you would be able to partially update the ACL, properties, and content independent of each other. Now that I've added all my course items to Microsoft Graph, I can use the Graph Search API to search for results. Or I could use the Microsoft Search box to search for courses. A great connector has two key components: an administration component allowing the admin to set up and manage the connector, as well as the sync component that takes care of syncing content into Graph. While I built a command line interface to set up and manage my Strawman connector, you must consider investing in a simple yet intuitive admin experience. While each connector would require a purpose-built admin experience, the core tenets apply throughout the board. So let's take a look at the admin experience of one of our reference connectors. The Enterprise Website Connector allows me to set one or more connections to various websites. With this connection, I plan to index graph documentation. I provide the basic connection information and then provide the connection settings. Almost every enterprise data source would require some sort of authorization. In this case, since I'm accessing a public website, I will select the authentication type as none. I could optionally exclude specific URLs from the graph documentation. While the connector author has pre-selected a basic schema for me, the connector also allows me to make schema customizations. The website connector is a fairly simple connector with respect to permissions. In case of more complicated scenarios, you might have to implement screens where you map your external users onto AAD users and get additional information to sync group or group-like constructs. The website connector offers a fairly basic scheduler. A good scheduler would allow an admin to choose a sync frequency along with the ability to schedule crawl at a specified time period. Most admins would prefer crawling their content sources at off hours or over weekends when the load on the source system is likely to be low. In addition to these common administrative components, you should consider adding additional capabilities such as diagnostics and sync statistics. The sync component is the crux of the connector. You need to figure out the best strategy to traverse your data source. A vast majority of data sources are lists in nature, and only a small subset is graph or hierarchical in nature. A common best practice when crawling a content source is to expose different types of crawl. A full crawl required for the initial sync, and a more efficient incremental crawl that updates only items that have changed. However, if you have change notifications from the source, or you're building the graph connector directly into your product, you would be able to push changes as and when they occur, instead of crawling the content source at a scheduled frequency. You need to ensure that you extract the source permission and craft the ACL correctly to reflect the same permissions in graph. In addition to these fundamentals, you could provide additional value to your customers by offering content enrichment services. While Microsoft has built and published some of the most demanded connectors, our ecosystem of partners has built over 100 connectors. And if your requirements are not satisfied by this vast ecosystem of connectors, you could choose to build your own connector now that you know how to build one.
Hi, I am Nicolas Moreau and I work with Raju on the Microsoft Search Graph API, mostly on the query side. Today, we want to show one of our partners who has made a deep integration with Microsoft Search API, both on the ingestion side and on the query side. So Lumaps is a social intranet solution which pushes organization to the next level by better connecting employee to their work environment. The Lumaps solution is fully integrated with Office 365 by aggregating information from the customer's tenant or by augmenting Office 365 information with some very specific news, HR vertical. And this content is stored in the Lumaps content repository. So in this demo, we will show two things. First thing, we will show how Lumaps integrated with Microsoft Graph connectors to make Lumaps content available in the Office 365 experience, mainly SharePoint, Office.com. And the second piece of the demo is to show how Lumaps has been integrating with the Microsoft Search API to surface Office 365 data in search results. So here in the Lumaps portal, I am connected as Megan, as my tenant admin. You can see here I'm connected with my AV account using single sign-on. So most of the content that is present in this page is actually stored in the Lumaps content database. So Lumaps has made it possible to push this information stored in their content database to push it into the Microsoft Search index. So this is something that the admin from Lumaps can go here in the Lumaps configuration. And here on this configuration page, I am able to see the connectors that were already pre-configured. I will just show how this is created and how I can actually, from the Lumaps UX here, create a connector and push content into the Microsoft Search Index. So here I need to define a name for my connector. I'll call it Lumaps. And then here on the schema, this is actually the schema of the content stored into the Lumaps database. So there's the out-of-the-box schema, but I can decide to remove some of the items that I don't want to be pushed into the Microsoft Search Index. And then here I define what type of content I want to be pushed into this particular connector. So here I will choose post. And once this is done, under the cover, what's happening is that Lumaps app is actually calling the ingestion API to create the connector, publish the schema, and start to sync the item. So here, for the sake of the demo, we have already some connectors that are configured for different content types of communities, posts, and content. So now I will show how these changes are reflected into the Office 365 admin experience. So here I'm connected as well as a tenant admin in the Office 365 admin experience in the Microsoft Search customization UX. So here on the connectors, I can, if I refresh here, I am able to see the connectors that was just created just a couple minutes ago. We see these connectors that were created. In order for Lumaps content to show up in search, the Office 365 tenant admin has to go through an additional configuration step where you define a custom vertical and a result type that here has been made. So here what I'm saying is that I want a specific vertical in my search result that is going to be named intranet, and that all the content from Lumaps community, Lumaps post, and Lumaps content will be showing up. So now when I go into SharePoint and when I look for a particular product name called X1050, then in the Alt tab, I can see some documents from that particular code name, but I can also see some intranet results that are actually coming from the Lumaps search index in Microsoft Search. When I go in more intranet results, it's equivalent to going to the intranet tab. So this intranet tab is actually the custom vertical that has been configured by the tenant admin, where all content indexed and pushed from the maps is showing up. And now, if I go back in my Lumaps app and I search for the exact same content, I am, of course, able to see the content stored in Lumaps, but I am also able to see some SharePoint files. And these SharePoint files are actually being pulled by Lumaps, calling the Microsoft Search API to get specific SharePoint content to being returned in the page. So in this demo, I've been showing how Lumaps created some custom connectors to push content into the Microsoft Search Index, and how the Microsoft Search experience are able to return this content to end users. In this session, we've been showing the different steps to create your own connectors to ingest data in the Microsoft Graph. 1. Create the connection. 2. Define and register schema. 3. Sync items. We've also shown in the Lumaps integration how this materializes in a custom admin experience as well as in a custom end user experience. So now everything you need to build the graph connectors and query data is available to you. The public documentation is available on these two links, Graph Connectors, MS Search API. You can also reach out to us or give feedback via user voice, Stack Overflow, or GitHub from the documentation page. So now you can start to identify the data silo in your organization that you want to ingest into Microsoft Graph and how they can surface in our search experience or in some other custom applications. Happy coding!